right now, in this very second, as you hear this voice, something is happening inside you that is more complex than anything humanity has ever built. Your heart, that tireless pump, just completed another beat, pushing blood through 60,000 miles of blood vessels. That distance is enough to wrap around the earth 2.5 times. In your bone marrow, right now, millions of new cells are being born. Red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets. Somewhere deep in your brain, in a silence you cannot hear, neurons are exchanging electrical signals, creating thoughts you are not even aware of. You might be sleeping, or just lying with your eyes closed, or sitting in a chair listening to these words. But your body is working. It works like a massive, completely silent and unbelievably complex city that never sleeps. In this city, the lights never go out and the traffic never stops. It has its own laws of physics, its own chemistry, and its own biology. And this city is you. But how is this possible? How can this incredible system function without our knowledge, without our control, without a single conscious thought? Why do we know so little about what happens inside us every second? How did it come to be that we take our own bodies for granted, never thinking about the intricate engineering behind every breath, every step, every heartbeat? And what would happen if we stopped for a moment and truly looked at ourselves? Today, we are going on that journey. This will not be a dry anatomy lecture or a physiology textbook. This will be one day in the life of your body. We will follow how this biological masterpiece works, from the first glimpse of light in your eyes to deep, restorative sleep. We will see how your body prepares for a new day, how it reacts to food, to movement, to thoughts, and how it reboots at night. And I am warning you, after this journey, you will never look at yourself the same way again. Because you will learn what has been hidden from you every single day. You will see the invisible. You will feel what you have never felt before. Let us start from the very beginning. From the moment your eyes open. You think you are just waking up. The alarm went off, you reached over, hit the button, and now your eyes are opening. You stretch, yawn, rub your eyelids. It feels so natural, so routine. But behind this simple, everyday scene, there is an entire drama that has been unfolding for hours while you slept. An hour before you even realized it was morning, your body had already begun preparing for the new day. It did not wait for a signal from your conscious mind. It did not ask permission. It followed its own internal schedule, one that was programmed into it by millions of years of evolution. This ability to follow an internal rhythm is called the circadian rhythm. It is a kind of biological clock that ticks inside every single one of us without exception. This clock has nothing to do with the alarm on your nightstand. It does not depend on your work or school schedule. It is determined by nature itself, by the cycle of day and night. And it is so powerful that even if you were trapped in a cave without a single ray of light, your body would still live by this cycle. It is a built-in timekeeper that runs from the moment you are born until your very last breath. But what is the circadian rhythm, really? It is not just a feeling of morning or evening. It is a deep, fundamental process that regulates every aspect of our physiology, from body temperature and blood pressure to hormone production and brain activity. And this rhythm does not depend on your alarm clock. It is determined by the cycle of day and night. Light hitting the retina of your eyes sends a signal to a tiny region of the brain located right above the point where the optic nerves cross. This region, called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, is our master timekeeper. It sits inside the hypothalamus, an ancient brain structure responsible for the most basic survival functions: hunger, thirst, temperature, sleep. The suprachiasmatic nucleus is a cluster of roughly 20,000 neurons. Just 20,000. For comparison, your brain has 86 billion of them. But these 20,000 cells do the work of coordinating the activity of the entire rest of the brain and the entire body. Like a master conductor, they send signals throughout the organism, making everything act in unison. The SCN receives information about light directly from the eyes through a special pathway that is not connected to vision. This is called the retino-hypothalamic tract. Light hits the retina, and specialized cells containing a light-sensitive pigment called melanopsin send a signal straight to the SCN, bypassing the visual processing centers in the cortex. Even completely blind people who have lost their photoreceptors but still have these melanopsin cells can synchronize their circadian rhythms with the day-night cycle. That shows just how fundamental this system is. Long before you opened your eyes, the SCN commanded your adrenal glands to start producing cortisol. Cortisol. This word often makes us anxious. We call it the stress hormone. And in a certain context, that is true. But in this context, in the hours before dawn, cortisol is the waking hormone. It does not cause stress. It prepares the body for activity. Gradually, cortisol levels in the blood begin to rise. It acts like a gentle but persistent wake-up call. It does not just wake you up, it boots up your entire system. Your heart rate increases, your blood pressure rises so that blood flows faster through your vessels, delivering oxygen and glucose to every organ. Your metabolism speeds up, your muscle tone increases. You are still lying there with your eyes closed, but your body has already switched into launch mode and is ready for action. It is like a pilot starting the engines before takeoff. All systems go through a pre-flight check and prepare for operation. At the same time, the hypothalamus, receiving light information through the SCN, signals the pineal gland to stop producing melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone of sleep and darkness. Its levels start rising in the evening when it gets dark, peak in the middle of the night, and then drop to a minimum by morning. This drop is a chemical signal for you to wake up. It is essentially saying, the night is over, time to get up. Melatonin does not just switch off sleep, it makes you more receptive to waking up. It lowers your body temperature, slows your metabolism, and prepares the body for the transition into an active state. Picture this mechanism. You have not made a single conscious movement yet, and your physiology has already completely reconfigured itself. Your body has prepared itself to face the world, adjusted its internal processes, pumped blood into muscles and brain. This is an incredible level of independence and complexity, and you do nothing to make it happen. It just happens on its own. You do not even know about it until you start studying your own body. But you know what is the most amazing part? This process is not static. Your circadian rhythm does not perfectly match the 24-hour cycle of the Earth. In reality, our internal clocks run a little longer. For most people, they are about 24 hours and 10 to 15 minutes. This means that without external cues, without sunlight, our bodies would gradually drift, falling asleep and waking up later and later. That is exactly why we handle jet lag so poorly. Our internal timekeeper cannot instantly reset. It resists, trying to stick to its old schedule. This condition is called desynchrinosis, and it causes that broken, exhausted feeling we get after long flights. That is why morning light is so important. When you wake up and see the sun, you are not just waking up. You are synchronizing your internal clocks. You are sending a signal to the SCN that says it is time to align with the outside world. This process is called entrainment. And that is exactly why sleep experts recommend going outside first thing in the morning, or at least opening the curtains. Light is the most powerful signal for our internal synchronization. It resets the clocks and tells them what time of day it is. This dawn dance of hormones is the beginning of everything. It is the transition from rest to activity. But this transition would not be possible without one crucial process that is also regulated by our internal timekeeper: our breathing. When we wake up, we automatically take a deeper breath. That breath is not just a reflex. It is a signal to the entire system that the day has begun. And that first breath of the new day is not just breathing. It is the beginning of the most important journey in your body. A journey that lasts a lifetime, from the first cry at birth to the final breath. This is the journey of air. And right now, as you take that breath, you set off a chain of events that will lead us to the next chapter. You do this roughly 20,000 times a day. You do it without thinking. You do it in your sleep, while eating, while talking. You are doing it right now. You are breathing. This act is so natural, so automatic, that we never pay attention to it. We only notice breathing when it becomes difficult, during illness, physical exhaustion, or in a moment of intense fear. Only when air stops flowing freely do we realize how vital it is. But what actually happens in that moment? When you inhale, air passes through the nose or mouth. Let us start with the nose. Your nose is not just an organ for smelling and not just an opening. It is a powerful, high-tech air conditioner. Inside the nasal cavity, on its mucus lining, a true engineering marvel takes place. The nasal lining is covered with a dense network of blood vessels and moistened by mucus produced by specialized cells. As air passes through the nose, regardless of what it is like outside, cold, dry and dusty, or on the contrary, warm and humid, it gets transformed. It is warmed or cooled to your body temperature. Air that has passed through your nose always has a temperature of about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, no matter what the weather is outside. It is humidified to 100%. Dry air that could damage the delicate tissues of the lungs becomes moist. And it is filtered. Hairs in the nose, called vibrissae, catch larger particles of dust. Finer particles settle on the sticky mucus that is constantly produced by the cells of the mucus lining. This process turns cold, dry, dirty outdoor air into warm, moist, and purified air ready for the journey into the lungs. This is an engineering solution without which our delicate airways would be constantly dried out and damaged. Breathing cold air directly into the lungs would cause bronchial spasms and cell damage. Nature anticipated this by creating this complex filter conditioner at the very start of the airway. After the nose, air passes through the throat and enters the larynx, or voice box. The larynx is not just a tube. It is a complex organ made up of cartilage, ligaments, and muscles. Inside it are the vocal cords, two folds of mucous membrane that can tighten and relax. When you speak, the muscles of the larynx tighten the cords, and the airflow makes them vibrate, producing sound. The pitch depends on how tight the cords are. When you whisper, the cords do not vibrate. Air simply passes through the gap between them, creating that characteristic hissing sound. But the main job of the larynx is not making sounds. It is protecting the airway. The larynx contains the epiglottis, a flexible cartilage flap. When you swallow, the epiglottis drops down and covers the entrance to the larynx, directing food and liquid into the esophagus, not the windpipe. If this mechanism fails, you choke. But you cough, and a strong blast of air pushes the object back out. This is a protective reflex that saves your life every time you eat. Without it, every meal would be life-threatening. Next, air travels down the trachea, or windpipe. The trachea is a tube about 4 to 5 inches long, its walls reinforced by rings of cartilage. These rings are open at the back, which allows the esophagus behind it to expand when you swallow food. The trachea, like the trunk of a tree, splits into 2 main bronchi, right and left, leading to the right and left lung. The right bronchus is slightly wider and shorter than the left, and that is where foreign objects most often end up if we inhale them. This anatomical feature explains why the right lung is more commonly affected during aspiration. The bronchi branch again and again inside the lungs, first into lobar bronchi, then segmental ones, then into smaller bronchioles. This branching looks like the crown of an upside-down tree, and the farther along you go, the thinner the branches become, and the thinner their walls get. At the end of this path, on the very thinnest twigs, sit tiny sacs called alveoli. This branching process is called the bronchial tree, and it goes through about 23 levels of division. Alveoli are the final destination of the air. We're talking about 300 million of these tiny sacs. They are incredibly small, just 8 to 12 thousandths of an inch across. But if we could spread them all out in a single layer on the ground, they would cover an area of about half a tennis court, roughly 750 square feet. And this is exactly where the main miracle of breathing happens. The walls of the alveoli and the walls of the capillaries wrapped around them are only 1 cell thick. Between them, there is almost no distance at all. This minimal barrier allows gases to pass through easily. The oxygen you just inhaled moves from the air into the blood, and carbon dioxide, the waste product of cell activity, leaves the blood and moves into the air to be exhaled. This process is called gas exchange, and it happens through simple diffusion, the movement of molecules from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. There is less oxygen in the blood than in the alveolar air, so it moves into the blood. There is more carbon dioxide in the blood, so it moves into the alveoli. This is a passive process that requires no energy, but its efficiency depends on the enormous surface area of the alveoli and the thinness of their walls. Each alveolus is covered by a network of capillaries, and blood passes through them slowly enough to get fully loaded with oxygen. But the efficiency of this process depends on how well this respiratory tree is built and how clean the airways are. If the bronchi are narrowed by spasm or inflammation, air cannot reach the alveoli. If the alveoli are filled with fluid, gas exchange breaks down. Every detail of this system matters. The human body is a master at keeping itself clean. The inner surface of the airways, from the trachea to the bronchioles, is lined with ciliated epithelium. The cells of this lining have microscopic hair-like structures on their surface called cilia. These cilia are constantly moving in wave-like patterns. They work like a conveyor belt, pushing mucus with trapped dust and microorganisms out of the lungs. You simply swallow this mucus, and it is destroyed by stomach acid. This is constant, tireless cleaning that happens 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, your entire life. The city never sleeps, even when we do. And this self-cleaning mechanism is vital. Without it, our lungs would quickly become clogged with dust and bacteria. And this is remarkable. While we sleep, our lungs keep working. We take breath after breath, and our internal factory keeps producing oxygen for every cell. Breathing is the only automatic function that we can consciously control. We can hold our breath or speed it up. But if we stop thinking about it, the automatic centers in the brainstem take over. And that is a good thing, because otherwise we would forget to breathe the moment we got distracted by something else. But at the very moment we inhale, when air fills our lungs, we are not just starting gas exchange. We are setting off an entire chain of events in another system, the most complex system in our body. The system that is allowing you right now to hear my voice and understand these words. We are activating our nervous system. And this journey of a signal, which begins with a breath, takes us to the very core of our being. The information that you just took a breath spreads almost instantly throughout your entire brain. But how does that work? How can air in the lungs affect what you think, feel, and perceive? The answer lies in our nervous system, the greatest creation of evolution. Your brain is the most complex object in the known universe. It contains about 86 billion neurons. That is roughly as many stars as there are in the Milky Way galaxy. And each of those neurons can form up to 10,000 connections with other neurons. This means the number of possible pathways a signal can take through your brain exceeds the number of atoms in the entire observable universe. That is not a metaphor. That is math. That is a reality that goes beyond anything we can imagine. But how does this incredible mechanism work? How does a signal travel through this enormously complex network? Let us look at it on a microscopic level. A neuron is a specialized cell designed to transmit information. It has a cell body containing the nucleus and long, thin extensions, dendrites, and an axon. Dendrites are like the inputs of the neuron. They receive signals from other neurons. The axon is like the output. It sends signals onward to other neurons, muscles, or glands. A signal in a neuron is an electrical impulse. But unlike a wire where electricity flows simply as a stream of electrons, in a neuron it is much more complex. At rest, the inside of a neuron carries a negative charge relative to the outside. This is created by special protein pumps that push sodium ions out of the cell and pull potassium ions in. This process requires energy and runs constantly, even while you sleep. It is like a battery that is always recharging. But when a signal reaches a dendrite, this balance is disrupted. Ion channels in the neuron's membrane open and sodium rushes in. This causes a sharp change in charge called depolarization. If the depolarization is strong enough, it reaches the threshold and the neuron fires. An electrical impulse called an action potential is generated. It is like flipping a switch. It is either on or off. Neurons work on an all-or-nothing principle. This impulse, like a wave, races down the axon. The speed of this wave can reach about 270 miles per hour. A nerve impulse in your body travels faster than a race car, but it does not move along the axon like electricity through a simple wire. It actually jumps from one node to the next, much like a flame jumping from one blade of grass to another. These nodes are called the nodes of Ranvier, and the sections between them are covered by a myelin sheath. Myelin is a fatty tissue that insulates the axon and speeds up signal transmission. It works like insulation on an electrical wire. Without myelin, the signal would travel slowly and fade over long distances. That is why, in people with multiple sclerosis, where the immune system destroys myelin, signal transmission slows down and movement coordination breaks down. Myelin is what makes our nervous system fast and efficient. Without it, we could not react to the world as quickly as we do. But how does a signal pass from one neuron to another? Neurons are not directly connected to each other. Between them is a tiny gap called a synapse. This gap is only about 20 nanometers wide, 5,000 times thinner than a human hair. And to cross this gap, the signal must transform from electrical to chemical. When an action potential reaches the end of the axon, it triggers the release of chemical substances called neurotransmitters. These molecules cross the synaptic gap and bind to receptors on the surface of the next neuron. It is like a key fitting into a lock. Each neurotransmitter fits only its specific receptor. If the key fits, it opens the lock, and a new electrical impulse is triggered in the second neuron. This chemical message can turn the next neuron on or off, and this process repeats over and over, passing information from one cell to the next. There are many different neurotransmitters, each performing its own function. Acetylcholine handles muscle contractions and memory. Dopamine handles motivation and pleasure. Serotonin handles mood, sleep, and appetite. GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, handles the slowing down of the nervous system. Glutamate handles excitation. This is the chemical language your brain speaks. Without these molecules, we could not think, feel, or move. This journey of a signal requires enormous energy. The brain weighs only about 2% of your total body weight, but it consumes about 20% of all the energy you get from food. It is the hungriest organ. Every thought, every movement, every feeling is the result of billions of neurons constantly exchanging signals, consuming energy produced by your body. And all that energy is needed just so you can listen and understand. And all of this happens so that right now you can hear and understand the words I am saying. But what is even more amazing is that right now, while you are listening, your brain is not just receiving information, it is interpreting it. It creates images, connects them to your experience, triggers emotions. This is a continuous process that defines who you are. This is your consciousness. And while you are awake and thinking, your brain works non-stop. But in the process of this work, Like any engine, it produces waste. And this is where we come to the great paradox. While you are awake, the cleanup of this waste barely happens. Your brain, like any complex machine, needs maintenance. And the only time it can do a deep clean is when the city goes dark. But for that moment to arrive, your body needs fuel. It needs to eat. And this next stage of our day, eating, activates another system, no less complex, that turns food into energy and building blocks for our body. But before the city sinks into night, it needs fuel. It needs to eat. And the process of getting that fuel is perhaps one of the most underappreciated and amazing wonders of our body. You sit down at the table. In front of you is a plate of food. You take a bite of bread or a sip of juice. It seems simple. You chew, you swallow, and the food disappears. But for your body, this is the beginning of an incredibly complex, multi-stage logistics operation involving dozens of organs and systems working in perfect coordination. The process of digestion begins even before food enters your mouth. Just the smell or sight of food makes your salivary glands start producing saliva. This is a preparatory stage that works through a conditioned reflex. Your brain says, "Food is coming. Get ready to receive it." This is called the cephalic phase of digestion. It prepares the gastrointestinal tract for the incoming food. Saliva is not just water. It is a biological cocktail containing enzymes, particularly amylase, which begins breaking down carbohydrates into simple sugars right in the mouth. Chewing is the mechanical breakdown of food. It increases the surface area that enzymes can act on. The more thoroughly you chew your food, the more efficiently it is digested. This is the first and most important stage of digestion. Without thorough chewing, food cannot be properly processed in the stomach and intestines. When you swallow, food sets off on a long journey down the esophagus. The esophagus is a muscular tube connecting the throat to the stomach. It contains no digestive enzymes. Its job is simply to deliver food to its destination. And it does this through peristalsis, wave-like contractions of smooth muscle. These contractions are so strong that food can move through the esophagus even if you are standing on your head. The force of peristalsis is enough to push food downward against gravity. Once in the stomach, food encounters one of the most aggressive environments in the human body. Gastric juice contains hydrochloric acid with a pH of about 1.5. That means it is 10,000 times more acidic than blood. This acid can dissolve certain types of metal. It kills most bacteria and viruses that may have come in with the food. And it begins the process of breaking down proteins into smaller chains of amino acids. But why does your own stomach not digest itself? The answer lies in a complex defense system. The inner surface of the stomach is coated with a thick layer of mucus. This mucus creates a physical barrier between the acid and the cells of the stomach wall. On top of that, the cells lining the stomach are constantly being replaced. Every 3 to 5 days, the entire inner layer of the stomach is completely renewed. It is as if you relaid the floor in your kitchen every week, so the acid would not eat through it. This continuous renewal process protects the stomach from self-digestion. After processing in the stomach, the food, now turned into a semi-liquid mush called chyme, slowly begins entering the small intestine. This transition is carefully controlled by a sphincter, a muscular ring that opens and closes, letting through small portions of chyme. This sphincter is called the pyloric sphincter, and it regulates the rate of stomach emptying, so the small intestine is not overwhelmed. It is in the small intestine where the real magic of digestion happens. It consists of three parts: the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Two critical components flow into the duodenum: bile from the liver and enzymes from the pancreas. Bile is an emulsifier. It breaks large fat droplets into smaller ones, much like dish soap breaks up grease on a pan. This increases the surface area of fats for enzyme action. Without bile, fats could not be digested. Pancreatic enzymes are incredibly powerful catalysts. They break down proteins into amino acids, carbohydrates into simple sugars, and fats into fatty acids and glycerol. These enzymes work in a slightly alkaline environment created by bicarbonates, also released by the pancreas. This neutralizes the acid coming from the stomach and creates optimal conditions for the enzymes to work. The inner surface of the small intestine is not smooth. It is covered with millions of tiny finger-like projections called villi. Each villus is in turn covered with microscopic projections called microvilli. This increases the absorption surface area hundreds of times over. If we could flatten out all the villi and microvilli, their total area would be about 2,150 square feet, roughly the size of a tennis court. It is through this enormous surface that nutrients enter the blood and lymph to be delivered to every cell in the body. Everything that is not absorbed in the small intestine moves on to the large intestine. Here, in the colon, water and electrolytes are extracted from the remaining food. And here is also where trillions of bacteria live, our gut microbiome. These bacteria are not random guests. They are partners that help us digest complex carbohydrates we cannot break down on our own. They produce certain vitamins, like vitamin K and some B vitamins. They influence our immune system and even our mood. It is an entire ecosystem inside us, and its health directly affects our overall well-being. But the digestion process is only one side of the coin. Digestion gives us energy. But where is that energy stored? And how does the body decide what to do with it? Use it now or save it for later? To answer that question, we need to turn to our great transportation network, which delivers this energy to every corner of our body, and to the organ that manages this complex distribution. The fuel has been extracted, but how is it delivered to where it needs to go? The answer leads us to the very heart of the transportation system, our circulatory system, this endlessly moving current that connects everything together. And it is to this current that we turn in the next part of our journey. Your body has just completed the most complex stage of converting the outside world into internal energy. Food became fuel, and fuel entered the blood. But now this flow must find its way to every cell, every organ, every muscle. And this flow, this continuous river transport, is maintained by a tireless pump that has been working non-stop since the very first second of your life. So how is this transportation network built? And what happens when it hits an obstacle? That is what we will discover next. Your heart just made another beat. This happens again and again, rhythmically and relentlessly, your entire life. In a day, it contracts about 100,000 times. In a year, more than 35 million times. Over 70 years of life, more than 2.5 billion contractions. And each one, every single contraction, pushes blood on a journey through your body. You do not feel this journey. You do not hear the noise of this flow, even though it moves through vessels with a total length of more than 60,000 miles. That distance is enough to circle the globe 2.5 times at the equator. And this entire network, all these arteries, veins, and capillaries, works as a single system, delivering oxygen and nutrients to each of the 37 trillion cells in your body. Your heart is not just a pump. It is 2 pumps working as one, synchronized to a fraction of a second. The right side of the heart, the right ventricle, pumps blood to the lungs. This is the pulmonary circuit. Here, blood releases carbon dioxide and picks up oxygen. The left side, the left ventricle, pumps this oxygen-rich blood throughout the entire body. This is the systemic circuit. The left side of the heart is significantly more powerful than the right, because it has to push blood through the entire vascular network of the body, overcoming the resistance of all the arteries and capillaries. Every heartbeat starts with an electrical impulse. This impulse is born in the sinoatrial node, a tiny cluster of cells in the wall of the right atrium. This is the natural pacemaker. It generates a signal roughly once per second, and this signal spreads through the heart's conduction system, making it contract in the correct sequence. First, the atria contract, pushing blood into the ventricles. Then, with a slight delay, the ventricles contract, sending blood into the arteries. This delay is critically important. It gives the ventricles time to fill with blood before the powerful contraction. The sound of your heart, that familiar lub-dub you hear through a stethoscope or feel in your chest, is not the sound of muscle contracting. It is the sound of valves snapping shut. The first sound, the lub, occurs when the atrioventricular valves, the mitral and tricuspid, close at the moment the ventricles begin contracting. The second sound, the dub, occurs when the semilunar valves, the aortic and pulmonary, close at the moment the ventricles relax. These valves work as perfect mechanisms, opening and closing more than 3 billion times in your lifetime, without lubrication, without replacement, without repair. Arteries, which carry blood away from the heart, have thick, elastic walls. They consist of 3 layers. The inner layer is the endothelium, smooth and slippery, so blood flows freely. The middle layer is smooth muscle that can contract and relax. The outer layer is connective tissue that provides strength. Arteries are not passive tubes, they are active. They respond to signals from surrounding tissues, widening or narrowing depending on the body's needs. When you run, the arteries leading to your leg muscles widen. This is called vasodilation. They become wider to deliver more oxygen and nutrients to the working muscles. When you are digesting food, the arteries leading to the intestines widen to supply them with blood. When you are cold, the blood vessels near the skin surface constrict, vasoconstriction, to conserve heat and prevent it from escaping into the environment. This is called thermoregulation, and it demonstrates how the circulatory system interacts with other body systems. The largest arteries are about 1/2 inch across. The aorta, the main artery of the body, that exits the left ventricle and carries blood to all organs, has a diameter of roughly 1 inch at its base. As you move farther from the heart, arteries get thinner. They branch into second-order arteries, third, 10th. Eventually, they become arterioles, vessels only about 12/1000ths of an inch across. And finally, capillaries. Capillaries are the thinnest vessels in our body. Their diameter is just 2 to 4 10,000ths of an inch, comparable to the size of a red blood cell. Capillary walls are made of just one layer of cells, the endothelium. This ultra-thin membrane allows oxygen, nutrients, and waste products to pass through easily. Capillaries are so small that red blood cells have to pass through them one at a time, single file. Capillaries wrap around every cell of your body. They create a vast network in which no cell is more than about 2 to 4,000ths of an inch from a capillary. If we could connect all the capillaries into a single line, their length would be about 62,000 miles. It is right here in the capillary bed that the most important exchange takes place. Oxygen and glucose leave the blood and enter the tissues. Carbon dioxide and other metabolic waste products, on the other hand, move from the tissues into the blood to be removed from the body. In the capillaries, blood flows slowly, just a few hundredths of an inch per second, to allow enough time for this exchange. From the capillaries, blood collects into venules and then into veins. Veins are the vessels that return blood back to the heart. Pressure in the veins is much lower than in the arteries. Vein walls are thinner and they contain valves. These valves are tiny folds of the vein's inner lining that open in only one direction, toward the heart. They prevent blood from flowing backward, especially in the limbs, where blood must travel upward against gravity. When you are standing, blood in the leg veins must climb upward to the heart, fighting gravity. The valves in the veins prevent it from draining back down. When you walk or run, your leg muscles contract and squeeze the veins, pushing blood upward. This is called the muscle-venous pump. Without this system, blood would pool in the legs, and you would feel heaviness and swelling. That is exactly why standing in one place for a long time can be so tiring. Venous return is impaired, and the heart has to work harder to pump blood. The blood flowing through these vessels is not just water with dissolved substances. It is a complex suspension of cells in a liquid medium. Plasma, the liquid portion of blood, makes up about 55% of the volume. It is a solution of proteins, salts, hormones, nutrients, and metabolic waste. The remaining 45% is cells: red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Red blood cells, also called erythrocytes, are the most numerous cells in your body. In a single tiny drop of blood, there are about 5 million of them. If you multiply that by the total blood volume in the body, roughly 1 1/3 gallons, you get approximately 25 trillion red blood cells. Each one has the shape of a disc that is concave on both sides, like a donut without a hole. This shape is not accidental. It increases the cell's surface area, allowing it to carry oxygen more efficiently, and it lets red blood cells deform and squeeze through the narrowest capillaries. Inside each red blood cell are about 270 million molecules of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a complex protein that contains iron. It is the iron that gives blood its red color. Each hemoglobin molecule can bind 4 molecules of oxygen. This means one red blood cell can carry more than 1 billion molecules of oxygen. Without hemoglobin, we could not get enough oxygen. Oxygen simply does not dissolve well in plasma. Hemoglobin increases the oxygen-carrying capacity of blood by roughly 70 times. But hemoglobin does not just passively carry oxygen. It has an amazing property. It releases oxygen exactly where it is needed most. In tissues that are working hard and consuming a lot of oxygen, oxygen levels are low and carbon dioxide levels are high. This creates conditions in which hemoglobin releases its oxygen more easily. In the lungs, where there is plenty of oxygen, hemoglobin actively binds it. This is called the Bohr effect, and it is one of the most elegant, self-regulating mechanisms in our body. Red blood cells live about 120 days. Then they are broken down in the spleen and liver, and their components are recycled to create new cells. Every second, about 2.5 million new red blood cells are born in your bone marrow. This is a continuous cycle of birth, life, and death that keeps your body running. White blood cells, or leukocytes, are your mobile army. There are fewer of them than red blood cells, roughly 1 for every 500 to 1,000 red cells. But their role is no less important. White blood cells come in several types, each with its own specialty. Neutrophils are the most numerous white cells, making up about 60% of all white blood cells. They are the rapid response team. They are the first to arrive at a site of infection or injury, and they get there within minutes. Neutrophils do not just destroy bacteria, they literally devour them. This process is called phagocytosis. They surround the bacterium, engulf it, and digest it with enzymes. A single neutrophil can destroy up to 20 bacteria before it dies. The pus you see in a wound is mostly dead neutrophils that gave their lives fighting the infection. Lymphocytes are more specialized cells. B lymphocytes produce antibodies, proteins that bind to specific enemies, like a key to a lock. T lymphocytes are the killers. They destroy cells that have been infected by viruses or have become cancerous. They also help coordinate the immune response, directing other cells. These cells have memory. When you had chickenpox, your lymphocytes remembered the virus, and if it tries to attack again, they will respond much faster and more effectively. This is called acquired immunity. Platelets, or thrombocytes, are not whole cells, but fragments of cytoplasm broken off from giant cells called megakaryocytes in the bone marrow. Their job is stopping bleeding. When a blood vessel is damaged, platelets gather at the site of the damage, activate, and stick together, forming a plug. Then they release substances that trigger a cascade of clotting reactions. Fibrin, a special protein, forms a mesh that reinforces this plug, turning it into a stable clot. This process is complex and requires many clotting factors. If it is disrupted, a person may suffer from bleeding, as in hemophilia. If it is overactive, clots can form inside blood vessels, leading to heart attacks and strokes. Your circulatory system is not just transportation. It is a system of delivery, communication, and defense. It delivers hormones from endocrine glands to target organs. It transmits immune system signals. It distributes heat throughout the body. It regulates pH and fluid balance. It maintains homeostasis, the stability of the internal environment. But this transportation network is under constant threat. The outside world is full of dangers. Bacteria, viruses, fungi, toxins. They are all trying to get into the body and disrupt its operation. And this is where another system takes center stage. The defense system that patrols every inch of your body, every drop of blood, every cell. This is your immune system. Your body is not an isolated world. Every second, every breath, every bite of food exposes you to attacks. Bacteria, viruses, fungi, they are all trying to use you as a source of food and shelter. You do not notice this because you have an army. You have an immune system that is always on guard, always ready for battle. The first line of defense is barriers. Your skin is not just a covering, it is biological armor. The outer layer of skin, the epidermis, is made up of dead cells packed tightly together and infused with keratin, the same material your hair and nails are made of. This layer is nearly impenetrable to bacteria and viruses. The skin also has an acidic pH of about 5.5, which creates an environment hostile to many microorganisms. But skin is only the external boundary. Internal surfaces, mucous membranes, are also barriers. The mucous membranes of the respiratory tract, the digestive tract, and the urogenital system are all coated with a layer of mucus that mechanically traps particles and microorganisms. The mucus contains antibacterial enzymes, such as lysozyme. In the respiratory tract, cilia constantly push mucus with captured particles outward. When a pathogen manages to break through these barriers, the innate immune system kicks in. This is your rapid response, which does not require prior knowledge of the enemy. It activates within minutes and uses general recognition mechanisms. Macrophages are the devourer cells. They patrol the tissues and consume anything that seems foreign. They literally engulf a bacterium or virus, pull it inside, and digest it with enzymes. But macrophages do not just destroy the enemy. They are also scouts. They break down the pathogen into pieces and display those pieces on their surface like signal flags. This is called antigen presentation. Macrophages show other immune cells what the enemy looks like. Neutrophils are the first line of attack. They are the most numerous white blood cells. They are fast, aggressive, and unafraid of death. Neutrophils are the first to arrive at an infection site, and they attack with incredible ferocity. They release toxic substances that kill bacteria, and they die in the process. Pus is a buildup of dead neutrophils and destroyed bacteria. Natural killer cells, or NK cells, are another type of innate immune cell. They specialize in destroying cells that have been infected by viruses or have become cancerous. They recognize such cells by the absence of self-markers on their surface and destroy them by releasing toxic substances. Interferons are signaling molecules released by infected cells. They warn neighboring cells about the presence of a virus and make them produce antiviral proteins. Interferons also activate other immune cells, raising the alarm. Inflammation is not just a symptom of illness, it is an active, protective process. When tissue is damaged or infected, immune cells release chemical signals that cause blood vessels to widen and become more permeable. This leads to redness, swelling, heat, and pain. These symptoms mean your immune system is working. Blood brings more immune cells and nutrients to the site of damage. Swelling limits the spread of infection. Pain makes you protect the damaged area. But the innate immune system has limitations. It cannot handle certain pathogens, and it has no memory. If the same bacterium attacks again, the innate immune system will react the same way as the first time. For more complex tasks and for creating immunological memory, there is the adaptive immune system. The adaptive immune system is your elite army. It specializes in specific enemies. It learns from every battle, and it remembers every enemy it has ever encountered. B lymphocytes are the cells that produce antibodies. Antibodies are Y-shaped proteins. They bind to specific antigens, molecules on the surface of pathogens. Each B lymphocyte produces only one type of antibody, and that type matches only one specific antigen. When a B lymphocyte encounters its antigen, it activates and begins to divide. Some daughter cells become plasma cells, which produce huge quantities of antibodies. Others become memory cells, which remain in the body for decades and ensure a rapid response if the same pathogen is encountered again. T lymphocytes are coordinator and killer cells. Helper T cells, also called CD4 positive cells, help activate other immune cells. B lymphocytes, macrophages, cytotoxic T cells. They release cytokines, signaling molecules that direct the immune response. Cytotoxic T cells, also called CD8 positive cells, attack and destroy infected cells. They recognize cells that display fragments of pathogens on their surface and kill them before the pathogen can multiply. The adaptive immune system has enormous flexibility. It can recognize almost any chemical structure, even ones that have never existed in nature. This is achieved through an amazing mechanism. The genes encoding T cell and B cell receptors are assembled from many fragments, like a construction set. This creates an enormous diversity of receptors capable of recognizing virtually any antigen. Immunological memory is the basis of vaccination. A vaccine introduces a weakened or killed pathogen, or fragments of one, into the body. The immune system recognizes it, activates, and creates memory cells. When the real pathogen enters the body, these memory cells activate faster and more forcefully, preventing disease from developing. This is one of the greatest success stories in medicine. But sometimes the immune system makes mistakes. In autoimmune diseases, it attacks the body's own tissues. In allergies, it overreacts to harmless substances like pollen or certain foods. This shows that a powerful system requires precise calibration, and sometimes that calibration goes wrong. The immune system does not work in isolation. It constantly interacts with the nervous and endocrine systems. Chronic stress suppresses immunity because stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, suppress the activity of lymphocytes. Sleep affects immunity. During sleep, cytokines are released that boost the immune response. Nutrition affects immunity. A lack of vitamins and trace elements weakens the defenses. Your immune system is an incredibly complex and effective defense network that works around the clock, with no weekends or holidays. But even the best army needs logistics. It needs fuel. It needs to clean up the battlefield and remove waste. And that cleanup is handled by two main filters in your body, the liver and the kidneys. Every day, every second, your body produces waste. Cells die. Chemical reactions create byproducts. Toxins enter from outside through food, water, and air. All of this must be removed to keep the internal environment clean and balanced. And two main filter organs handle this disposal, the liver and the kidneys. The liver is the largest internal organ in your body. It sits in the upper right part of your abdomen, just below the diaphragm. It weighs about 3 1/3 pounds and has a dark red color due to its rich blood supply. About 3 pints of blood pass through the liver every minute. That is roughly 1/4 of your total blood flow. The liver performs more than 500 different functions. It is a true chemical factory. It converts nutrients from the intestines into energy. It produces proteins needed for blood clotting and substance transport. It makes bile, necessary for fat digestion. It stores glucose as glycogen and releases it when blood sugar drops. It stores vitamins and minerals. But the liver's main job is cleaning toxins out of the blood. The liver neutralizes alcohol, medications, protein breakdown products, and other harmful substances. It makes them less toxic and prepares them for elimination from the body. The cleaning process happens in hepatocytes, liver cells. These cells contain numerous enzymes that convert toxic substances into water-soluble compounds. Those compounds can then be excreted through bile or urine. Without this detox system, toxins would build up in the blood and poison the entire body. The liver also plays a critical role in glucose metabolism. After a meal, blood sugar rises. The liver absorbs glucose and converts it into glycogen, a form of energy storage. When blood sugar drops, for example between meals, the liver breaks down glycogen and releases glucose back into the blood. This keeps blood sugar stable, which is especially important for the brain, which needs a constant supply of glucose. The liver also participates in fat metabolism. It produces lipoproteins that transport fats in the blood and manufactures cholesterol, which is needed for building cell membranes and making hormones. If the liver is damaged, for example by alcohol or viruses, its functions are impaired. This can lead to a buildup of toxins in the blood, digestive problems, jaundice, and other serious consequences. Fortunately, the liver has an incredible ability to regenerate. It can restore up to 75% of its mass after damage. The kidneys are the second main filter of your body. They are located in the lower back area, on either side of the spine. Each kidney is roughly the size of a fist and weighs about 5 ounces. About 47 gallons of blood pass through the kidneys every day. This means all the blood in your body is filtered by the kidneys about 40 times a day. Each kidney consists of about 1 million functional units called nephrons. A nephron is a complex structure where filtration and reabsorption take place. Blood enters the nephron through the glomerulus, a ball of capillaries surrounded by a capsule. Here, under pressure, water and dissolved substances are filtered out of the blood, forming primary urine. Large molecules like proteins and cells stay in the blood. Then the primary urine passes through a long, winding tubule. Here, reabsorption takes place. Useful substances are returned to the blood. Glucose, amino acids, vitamins, most of the water and electrolytes. All of this is pulled from the urine and returned to the bloodstream. The tubule also secretes excess ions and toxins into the urine. As a result, secondary urine is formed, containing excess water, salt, and metabolic waste products like urea and uric acid. Secondary urine collects in the renal calyces and flows through the ureters into the bladder. The kidneys perform several critically important functions beyond filtration. They regulate the body's water and salt balance, maintaining a constant volume and composition of fluids. They regulate acid-base balance by removing excess hydrogen ions. They regulate blood pressure by releasing the enzyme renin, which activates mechanisms that raise blood pressure. The kidneys also participate in blood cell production. They produce the hormone erythropoietin, which stimulates the formation of red blood cells in the bone marrow. When oxygen levels in the blood drop, the kidneys increase erythropoietin production, which leads to more red blood cells, improving oxygen delivery. And finally, the kidneys are involved in vitamin D metabolism. They convert the inactive form of vitamin D that comes from food or is produced in the skin under sunlight into its active form. Active vitamin D is essential for calcium absorption and maintaining healthy bones. The liver and kidneys work in close coordination. The liver prepares toxins for elimination, and the kidneys remove them from the body. The liver regulates nutrient levels in the blood, and the kidneys regulate water and electrolyte levels. Together, they maintain the cleanliness and stability of your body's internal environment. But even the best filtration system cannot work without energy. Your body needs a constant supply of fuel to keep the heart, muscles, brain, and all other organs running. And managing this fuel, distributing energy and maintaining its balance, is the job of another amazing system, your endocrine system, a network of glands that release chemical messengers called hormones. Your body is a complex system in which every organ, every cell must work in harmony. But how is this harmony achieved? How does the heart know it needs to beat faster? How does the liver know to release glucose? How does the stomach know it is time to digest food? The answer lies in the endocrine system, a network of glands that produce hormones, chemical messengers that travel through the blood and carry signals from one organ to another. This is a communication system that works alongside the nervous system. But while the nervous system transmits signals quickly, in milliseconds, the endocrine system acts more slowly, from seconds to hours and days. In return, the effects of hormones are longer lasting and more widespread. Imagine your body as a huge factory. The nervous system is the phone network that delivers urgent messages in real time. The endocrine system is written orders sent throughout the factory, affecting the work of many departments at once. The command center of the endocrine system is in the brain, in the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is a small region at the base of the brain. It receives information from all body systems about blood temperature, sugar levels, pressure, stress. Based on this information, it makes decisions. It sends signals to the pituitary gland, a pea-sized gland hanging on a thin stalk below the hypothalamus. The pituitary is often called the master gland because it controls the work of other glands. It releases hormones that stimulate or suppress the activity of the thyroid gland, the adrenals, and the reproductive glands. The pituitary also produces hormones that act directly on target organs, such as growth hormone, which stimulates tissue growth, and prolactin, which stimulates milk production. The thyroid gland sits in the front of the neck, just below the voice box. It is shaped like a butterfly and consists of two lobes connected by a bridge. The thyroid produces thyroid hormones, thyroxine, or T4, and triiodothyronine, or T3. These hormones regulate the speed of metabolism throughout the entire body. They affect how quickly cells burn energy, heart rate, body temperature, growth and development, and brain function. If the thyroid produces too many hormones, the result is hyperthyroidism. The person becomes restless, loses weight, and their heart rate increases. If too few, hypothyroidism. The person becomes sluggish, gains weight, and feels cold. This shows how important precise hormonal regulation is. The parathyroid glands are 4 tiny glands located behind the thyroid. They produce parathyroid hormone, which regulates calcium levels in the blood. Calcium is needed for muscle function, nerve function, blood clotting, and bone health. Parathyroid hormone raises calcium levels by stimulating its release from bones and its reabsorption in the kidneys. If calcium gets too high, another mechanism kicks in: calcitonin, produced by the thyroid, which lowers calcium levels. The adrenal glands are two glands sitting on top of the kidneys. They consist of two parts: the cortex and the medulla. The cortex produces cortisol, the stress hormone, as well as aldosterone, which regulates water and salt balance. The medulla produces adrenaline and noradrenaline, the hormones of the fight or flight response. When you face a threat, the adrenals dump adrenaline into the blood. Your heart beats faster, breathing quickens, pupils dilate, blood shifts away from the skin and internal organs toward the muscles. You are ready to fight or run. This reaction develops in seconds and allows the body to mobilize all its resources. Cortisol acts more slowly, but its effects last longer. It raises blood sugar, suppresses immunity and inflammation, and helps the body cope with prolonged stress. Chronic stress leads to persistently elevated cortisol levels, which can cause health problems: weakened immunity, weight gain, sleep disruption, and depression. The pancreas is an organ that performs both endocrine and exocrine functions. The exocrine part produces digestive enzymes. The endocrine part consists of cell clusters called the islets of Langerhans. Beta cells in the islets produce insulin. Alpha cells produce glucagon. Insulin is the hormone that lowers blood sugar. After a meal, glucose levels rise, and insulin signals cells to absorb glucose from the blood and use it for energy or store it as glycogen. Glucagon does the opposite. It raises blood sugar by signaling the liver to release glucose from its reserves. This regulatory system is remarkably precise. A healthy person's blood sugar levels fluctuate within a very narrow range, roughly 70 to 110 milligrams per deciliter. When this system breaks down, diabetes develops. In type 1 diabetes, the immune system destroys the beta cells, and the body loses its ability to produce insulin. In type 2 diabetes, cells become resistant to insulin, and the pancreas cannot produce enough insulin to overcome that resistance. The reproductive glands, ovaries in women and testes in men, produce sex hormones: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. These hormones regulate the development of sexual characteristics, the maturation of reproductive cells, the menstrual cycle, and pregnancy. They also influence bone growth, muscle mass, fat distribution, mood, and sex drive. The endocrine system is an amazing mechanism of precise regulation. Hormones work in close coordination, creating complex feedback loops. When a hormone level drops, its production is stimulated. When it rises, production is suppressed. This is called negative feedback. It maintains the stability of the internal environment despite constant changes. But even the most perfectly tuned management and regulation system gets tired. By the end of the day, cortisol levels drop, melatonin levels rise, and your body begins preparing for rest. Day gives way to night. Wakefulness yields to sleep. And this is the time for maintenance, repair, and reboot. This is when your brain does its deep cleaning and your body restores its resources for a new day. Your body has been through an entire day, from the morning wake-up to evening fatigue. The circulatory system delivered fuel, the immune system fought off attacks, The liver and kidneys cleaned the internal environment. The endocrine system managed all the processes. But the day is ending, the sun is setting, and it is time for the most important and most underappreciated process in human life: sleep. What happens to you when you close your eyes and slip into darkness? How does your brain perform the deep cleaning we talked about? And why is this process vital for your health? That is what we will explore next. The day is winding down. The sun drops below the horizon, and your internal timekeeper, that same suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus, begins sending new signals. The cortisol level that kept you alert all day gradually falls. In its place, the pineal gland starts producing melatonin, the hormone of darkness, the hormone of sleep. You feel this as a gentle tiredness, a heaviness in your eyelids, a desire to close your eyes and disconnect from the world. This is not weakness. This is not laziness. This is your body, your internal management system, telling you the day is done, time for maintenance. You lie down in bed, you close your eyes, and a process begins that is no less complex and important than any process that happens in your body during the day. You fall asleep, but your body does not shut down. On the contrary, it switches to a different mode of operation. Sleep is not a passive state. It is an active, dynamic process that includes several distinct phases, each of which performs its own unique function. And each of these phases is vital for your health, your brain, and your body. Let us look at what happens when you fall asleep. The entire process of sleep can be divided into two main types: slow-wave sleep and rapid eye movement sleep, or REM sleep. These types alternate throughout the night, forming cycles lasting about 90 minutes each. Over the course of a night, you go through 4 to 5 of these cycles. When you first close your eyes and start drifting off, you enter the first stage of slow-wave sleep. This is light sleep, a transitional state between wakefulness and sleep. Your muscles relax, your heart rate slows, your breathing becomes more even. Your brain waves, which were fast and chaotic during the day, start to slow down. This stage lasts only a few minutes, and if someone woke you up right now, you would probably say you were not asleep. Then you transition to the second stage of slow-wave sleep. This is deeper sleep. Your body temperature drops. Your eyes stop moving. Brain waves become even slower, and they develop characteristic bursts of activity, sleep spindles, and K complexes. These bursts serve as a protective mechanism. They help your brain suppress external stimuli so you do not wake up from a random noise. You spend the largest portion of the night in this stage, roughly 45 to 55% of total sleep time. The third and fourth stages of slow-wave sleep are deep sleep, also called delta sleep. Brain waves become very slow and powerful. This is the deepest phase of sleep, and waking you up at this point is extremely difficult. If someone did wake you, you would be disoriented, drowsy, and irritable. This condition is called sleep inertia. It is during deep sleep that the main physical restoration of your body takes place. Your body releases growth hormone, which stimulates tissue repair and growth. Your cells actively divide, replacing damaged or worn-out ones. Your immune system releases cytokines that boost the immune response. This is the time when your body literally repairs itself. But perhaps the most amazing discovery about deep sleep was made quite recently, in 2012. A team of researchers led by Macon Nedergaard at the University of Rochester found that during deep sleep, a unique cleaning process kicks in inside the brain. They called it the glymphatic system. Here is how it works. Throughout the day, while you are awake, your brain is hard at work. Neurons exchange signals. Connections are created and broken. Thousands of chemical reactions take place. This process generates waste, molecules that need to be removed. One of the most dangerous types of this waste is beta amyloid, a protein that builds up in the brain and is linked to the development of Alzheimer's disease. During deep sleep, the space between brain cells expands by roughly 60%. This allows cerebrospinal fluid, which surrounds the brain, to flow into these expanded spaces and flush out waste, including beta amyloid. It is like a deep cleaning that happens every night. While you are awake, this system is nearly inactive. Your brain accumulates waste during the day, and at night, while you sleep, it washes it away. This discovery has enormous implications. It explains why chronic sleep deprivation is so harmful. If you regularly get too little sleep, your brain does not have time to perform this nightly cleanup. Toxins build up. Over time, this may lead to neuron damage and possibly the development of neurodegenerative diseases. After about 90 minutes of slow-wave sleep, the first phase of REM sleep begins. This is the most mysterious and most fascinating phase of sleep. Your eyes begin to move rapidly under closed eyelids. Your brain becomes very active, almost as active as when you are awake. But your body is completely relaxed. In fact, your muscles are temporarily paralyzed, so you cannot move during dreams. It is during REM sleep that you dream. Vivid, emotional, often bizarre dreams. Your brain processes the emotions experienced during the day. It consolidates memories, moving them from short-term to long-term storage. It creates new connections between ideas, which can lead to creative breakthroughs. REM sleep is especially important for emotional health. During this phase, your brain processes emotional experiences, reducing their intensity. It is like a therapy session that happens every night. That is exactly why you feel calmer and more balanced after a good night of sleep. Throughout the night, you cycle through several sleep stages. The first half of the night is rich in deep, slow-wave sleep. The second half has more REM sleep. That is why, if you wake up early in the morning, you often have vivid dreams. You are in a REM phase. Sleep is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity. Chronic sleep deprivation is linked to numerous health problems: obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, weakened immunity, depression, anxiety, impaired memory, and cognitive function. Lack of sleep shortens life. It is important to understand that the amount of sleep varies from person to person. Most adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Some people feel fine after 6 hours, while others need 10. But sleep quality is just as important as quantity. A regular schedule, a dark, quiet, and cool room, and no screens before bed, all of these improve sleep quality. So while you sleep, your brain performs its deep cleaning, your body repairs tissues, and your immune system strengthens. You wake up in the morning refreshed, ready for a new day. But the recovery process does not end with sleep. It continues throughout the entire day, constantly maintaining homeostasis, the internal balance of your body. Homeostasis is the central principle on which your entire body operates. It is the ability of your body to maintain the stability of its internal environment, despite constant changes in the external environment. Your body is an amazing system that continuously adjusts, regulates, and corrects its processes to maintain optimal conditions for life. Your body temperature should be between 97.7 and 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Blood sugar levels should be between 70 and 110 milligrams per deciliter. Blood pressure should be around 120 over 80 millimeters of mercury. Blood pH should be around 7.4. These parameters must be maintained within very narrow ranges because even small deviations can be life-threatening. Imagine your body as a huge factory where thousands of processes must run simultaneously without failure. Homeostasis is the management system that ensures no parameter goes beyond its allowable range. If something goes wrong, it activates corrective mechanisms. Thermoregulation is one of the clearest examples of homeostasis. Your body constantly produces heat. Muscles, even at rest, generate heat. Digestion, heart function, metabolism, all are heat generators. If you did not release this heat, your body temperature would quickly rise to dangerous levels. When your body overheats, for example on a hot day or during exercise, cooling mechanisms kick in. Blood vessels near the skin surface widen, increasing blood flow to the skin and boosting heat loss. You start to sweat. Evaporation of sweat from the skin surface absorbs heat, cooling your body. This is a remarkably efficient mechanism. About 1 quart of evaporated sweat can remove approximately 580 calories of heat. When your body gets too cold, the opposite mechanisms activate. Blood vessels near the skin surface constrict, reducing blood flow to the skin and lowering heat loss. You start to shiver. These are involuntary muscle contractions that generate heat. Your body hair stands up, a vestigial reflex that in our ancestors created an extra layer of air for insulation. Blood sugar regulation is another classic example of homeostasis. After a meal, blood sugar rises. The pancreas releases insulin, which opens the gates in cells for glucose. Cells absorb glucose and blood sugar drops. Between meals, blood sugar falls. The pancreas releases glucagon, which signals the liver to release glucose from glycogen reserves. Blood sugar returns to normal. This mechanism works continuously, 24 hours a day. It is thanks to this system that you can feel energized and alert between meals. If this mechanism breaks down, diabetes develops. In type 1 diabetes, the pancreas does not produce insulin. In type 2 diabetes, cells become resistant to insulin. Water and salt balance regulation is another example of homeostasis. Your body is roughly 60% water. The amount of water and the concentration of salts in the body must be maintained within strict limits. When you drink a lot of water, your kidneys produce more dilute urine, removing the excess fluid. When you are dehydrated, the kidneys concentrate urine, conserving water. The hormone vasopressin, produced by the pituitary gland, plays a key role in this process. When water levels in the body drop, vasopressin is released, making the kidneys retain water. When there is enough water, vasopressin production decreases, and the kidneys excrete more fluid. Blood pressure regulation is another important aspect of homeostasis. Blood pressure must be high enough for blood to reach all organs, but not so high that it damages blood vessels. Regulatory mechanisms involve the nervous system, the endocrine system, and the blood vessels themselves. When pressure drops, for example during blood loss, a series of mechanisms activate. Vessels constrict, increasing resistance and raising pressure. The heart beats faster, increasing cardiac output. The kidneys release renin, triggering a cascade of reactions that raises pressure. When pressure returns to normal, these mechanisms switch off. Blood pH regulation is another critically important process. Blood pH must stay between 7.35 and 7.45. Even small deviations can be dangerous. Buffer systems in the blood, the lungs, and the kidneys work together to maintain pH. The lungs regulate pH by changing the rate and depth of breathing, which affects carbon dioxide levels in the blood. The kidneys regulate pH by removing excess acids or bases in the urine. Homeostasis is a continuous process. Your body constantly monitors hundreds of parameters and adjusts them. It is like steering a large ship in rough seas. The captain, your brain, constantly receives information about the ship's condition, your body, and external conditions. It adjusts course to keep the ship on the right path. Most homeostatic mechanisms work on the principle of negative feedback. This means that a deviation from normal triggers mechanisms that reduce the deviation. The thermostat in your house works the same way. If the temperature gets too high, the thermostat turns on the air conditioner. When the temperature returns to normal, the air conditioner turns off. Negative feedback provides stability and allows your body to maintain constant conditions despite constant changes. It is one of the most elegant principles underlying all living systems. But homeostasis is not just about maintaining stability. It is also about adaptation. Your body can adapt to new conditions. When you start exercising regularly, your heart gets stronger, your lungs become more efficient, and your muscles become more resilient. This is called adaptation. Your body changes to better handle demands. When you move to the mountains, your body adapts to the lower oxygen levels. It starts producing more red blood cells to increase the oxygen-carrying capacity of the blood. This happens over the course of several days or weeks. Homeostasis is a dynamic equilibrium. Your body is constantly changing, adjusting, adapting. Internal stability is not a static state, but a process of continuous regulation. We have now reached the most complex, the most mysterious, and the most amazing organ in your body, the brain. The brain is not just an organ. It is the command center for everything you are. It coordinates the work of all other systems. It processes information. It creates thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories. It defines your personality, your character, your decisions. Your brain weighs only about 3 1/3 pounds, roughly 2% of your body weight. But it consumes about 20% of all the energy you take in. It is the hungriest organ in your body. It uses more energy than any other organ, including the heart. The brain consists of roughly 86 billion neurons. Each neuron is a complex cell that can form up to 10,000 connections with other neurons. The total number of connections in your brain is approximately 100 trillion. If you tried to count all the connections in your brain at a rate of 1 per second, it would take you more than 3 million years. But the brain is not just about the number of cells and connections. It is about organization. Neurons form complex networks that process information in parallel and in a distributed way. It is not like a computer with a central processor and memory. The brain works like a network where information processing happens simultaneously in many places. The brain can be divided into several main regions, each performing its own functions. The cerebral cortex is the outer layer of the brain, responsible for higher cognitive functions, thinking, speech, perception, planning. It is divided into two halves, the left and right hemispheres, connected by a bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum. The left hemisphere usually handles speech, logic, and detail analysis. The right hemisphere usually handles spatial awareness, creativity, and emotional processing. This division is not absolute. The hemispheres work together, and each participates in most functions. The cerebral cortex is divided into 4 lobes: the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, and the occipital lobe. The frontal lobe handles planning, decision-making, impulse control, and personality. The parietal lobe handles sensory information processing and spatial awareness. The temporal lobe handles hearing, speech comprehension, and memory. The occipital lobe handles vision. Below the cortex are other important structures. The hippocampus plays a key role in forming new memories. Without the hippocampus, you cannot form new facts and events in memory. The amygdala handles emotional processing, especially fear and pleasure. The basal ganglia participate in movement control and habit formation. The cerebellum sits at the back of the brain. It coordinates movement, balance, and posture. Although the cerebellum makes up only about 10% of the brain's volume, it contains more than half of all the brain's neurons. This is because cerebellar neurons are very small and densely packed. The brainstem is the most ancient part of the brain, connecting the brain to the spinal cord. It controls the most basic functions: breathing, heartbeat, blood pressure, sleep, and wakefulness. Damage to the brainstem is usually fatal because these functions are essential for life. Neuroplasticity is one of the most amazing properties of the brain. It is the brain's ability to change, reorganize, create new connections, and even new neurons, a process called neurogenesis, in response to experience. Neuroplasticity means your brain is not fixed. It is constantly changing. Every time you learn something new, new connections are created in your brain. Every time you repeat an action, those connections get stronger. Neuroplasticity is the foundation of learning and memory. When you learn a new skill, like playing the piano or a new language, your brain physically changes. New connections are created. Old ones are reinforced. This process takes time and repetition. That is exactly why practice is so important. Neuroplasticity also plays a role in recovery after brain injuries. When part of the brain is damaged, other parts can take over its functions. This is called functional reorganization. It can be remarkably effective, especially in children. Memory is one of the most complex and mysterious functions of the brain. Your brain stores an enormous amount of information: facts, events, skills, emotions. But memory is not a single system. There are several types of memory, each served by different brain structures. Short-term memory, or working memory, holds information for a brief period, from a few seconds to a few minutes. It lets you keep a phone number in your head while dialing it, or follow a conversation. The capacity of short-term memory is limited, usually 7 ± 2 units of information. Long-term memory stores information for a long time, from several hours to a lifetime. It is practically unlimited. Long-term memory is divided into explicit or declarative memory, which includes facts and events, and implicit or procedural memory, which includes skills and habits. Explicit memory is processed by the hippocampus and cortex. Implicit memory is processed by the cerebellum and basal ganglia. This explains why patients with hippocampal damage can forget facts and events, but can still learn new skills. Sleep plays a key role in memory consolidation. During sleep, the hippocampus and cortex exchange information, transferring new memories from short-term to long-term storage. It is like saving files to a hard drive. If you do not save the file, it is lost. The brain is an incredibly complex and amazing organ. It creates your reality, your personality, your consciousness. But even the brain does not work in isolation. It receives information from the senses, which constantly report on the state of the outside world and the internal environment. Your perception of the world is the result of your senses at work. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin. They all gather information from the external environment and send it to the brain for processing. The brain interprets this information, creating what we call reality. But this reality is not what actually exists out there. It is what your brain constructs based on the limited information coming from the senses. Vision is probably the most important sense for most people. Your eyes are not just cameras recording images. They are complex organs that process light and transmit information to the brain for further interpretation. Light hits the retina of the eye, where there are about 120 million rods and 6 million cones, photoreceptors that convert light into electrical signals. Rods are responsible for black and white vision and work in low light conditions. Cones are responsible for color vision and work in bright light. There are 3 types of cones, each sensitive to a different range of light wavelengths. Short, which is blue, medium, which is green, and long, which is red. The brain interprets the combination of signals from these 3 types as different colors. This explains why TVs and monitors use only 3 primary colors to create millions of shades. Information from the retina travels along the optic nerve to the brain, where it undergoes complex processing in the visual cortex of the occipital lobe. Here, lines, angles, edges, and movement are detected. Then the information is passed to other brain areas, where it is interpreted as objects, faces, and scenes. Vision is not an objective reflection of reality. The brain constantly fills in gaps, interprets ambiguous signals, and creates what appears to be a continuous and smooth experience. Optical illusions demonstrate how the brain can make mistakes in its interpretation. What you see is not what exists out there. It is what your brain thinks is out there. Hearing is the second most important sense. Your ears capture sound waves, pressure fluctuations in the air, and convert them into electrical signals. Sound waves are collected by the outer ear and directed into the ear canal, where they reach the eardrum. The eardrum vibrates, transmitting the vibrations to 3 tiny bones: the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. These bones amplify the vibrations and pass them to the oval window of the cochlea. The cochlea is a spiral-shaped structure filled with fluid. Vibrations of the oval window create waves in the fluid that travel through the cochlea. Inside the cochlea are hair cells that convert fluid vibrations into electrical signals. Different hair cells respond to different frequencies, allowing you to tell sounds apart by pitch. Information from the cochlea travels along the auditory nerve to the brain, where it is processed in the auditory cortex of the temporal lobe. The brain interprets the frequency, intensity, and timing of sounds, allowing you to understand speech, recognize voices, and enjoy music. Smell is one of the most ancient senses. Your nose contains about 40 million olfactory receptors that detect different molecules in the air. Each receptor is sensitive to specific types of molecules. The brain interprets the combination of receptor signals as different smells. Smell is closely linked to memory and emotion. This is because the olfactory system has direct connections to the limbic system, the structures involved in emotion and memory. That is why a certain smell can trigger vivid memories or emotional reactions. Taste is a combination of taste sensations and smell. Your tongue contains about 10,000 taste receptors that detect 5 basic tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami, the savory taste. Each taste receptor is sensitive to a specific type of molecule. The brain interprets the combination of signals as different flavors. Most of what we call taste is actually smell. When you chew, aromatic molecules from food rise into the nose through the back of the throat, stimulating olfactory receptors. That is exactly why food seems tasteless when you have a stuffy nose. Touch is the most complex and most underappreciated sense. Your skin contains many different receptors: mechanoreceptors that respond to pressure and touch, thermoreceptors that respond to temperature, and nociceptors that respond to pain. Different areas of the skin have different receptor densities. Fingertips, lips, and tongue have the highest density of receptors, making them the most sensitive. The back and legs have the lowest density, making them less sensitive. Touch plays a key role in social interaction. Physical contact stimulates the release of oxytocin, a hormone linked to bonding and trust. Hugs, touches, handshakes, all are important parts of human communication. Proprioception is the sense of body position and movement in space. It lets you know where your hands and feet are, even when you are not looking at them. Proprioception works through receptors in muscles, tendons, and joints that report body position to the brain. All these senses work together to create a unified perception of the world. The brain constantly combines information from different senses, creating a complete picture of reality. This is called multisensory integration. Your perception of the world is a construction built by your brain. It is not an exact copy of reality. It is a useful model of reality, created so you can navigate the world and survive. We have been through the entire day, from waking to deep sleep. We traced the path of air, blood, and nutrients. We saw how the brain works and how the senses perceive the world. But this is only the beginning. Your body is not just a collection of systems. It is a single whole where everything is connected. And perhaps the most amazing thing is that all these systems work without our knowledge, without our control, simply because they know how. Every day, your body carries out billions of processes without asking your permission. It takes care of you while you sleep, work, and dream. Your body is your most loyal ally, and in the next section, we will talk about how to keep this incredible machine in top condition and what happens when something goes wrong. We already talked about how your body digests food, how it extracts nutrients, and how it converts them into energy. But what exactly happens with that energy? How does your body decide how much to spend and how much to save? And why do some foods give you energy while others seem to drain it? The energy you get from food is measured in calories. A calorie is a unit of energy. 1 calorie is the amount of energy needed to heat about 1/30th of a fluid ounce of water by about 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit. When we talk about calories in food, we usually mean kilocalories, 1,000 calories. Your body constantly uses energy. Even when you are lying completely still, your body burns calories to keep the heart, lungs, brain, and other organs running. This is called the basal metabolic rate. The basal metabolic rate accounts for roughly 60 to 75% of your body's total energy expenditure. Many factors affect the basal metabolic rate: age, sex, genetics, muscle mass. Men typically have a higher basal metabolic rate than women because they have more muscle mass. As you age, the basal metabolic rate slows down because muscle mass decreases. That is why older people need fewer calories than younger ones. Beyond the basal metabolic rate, energy is spent on physical activity. The more you move, the more calories you burn. Physical activity can increase energy expenditure by 2 to 3 times compared to the basal rate. That is why exercise is so important for weight management. The third component of energy expenditure is the thermic effect of food. This is the energy your body spends digesting, absorbing, and storing nutrients. About 10% of the calories you consume are spent on this process. Proteins require more energy to digest than carbohydrates and fats. When you consume more calories than you burn, the excess energy is stored as fat. Fat is an energy reserve for tough times. Your body is incredibly efficient at storing fat. 1 gram of fat contains 9 calories, more than twice as much as a gram of carbohydrates or protein. Fat also takes up less space than glycogen. When you burn more calories than you consume, your body starts tapping into its energy reserves. First, it uses glycogen, the carbohydrate reserves in the liver and muscles. Glycogen provides quick access to energy, but its supply is limited. After roughly 12 to 24 hours of fasting, glycogen reserves are depleted and the body switches to fat. Fat is broken down into fatty acids, which can be used by almost all cells in the body for energy. The brain, however, cannot use fatty acids directly. It needs glucose. So during prolonged fasting, the body starts converting fatty acids into ketones, an alternative fuel for the brain. This process is called ketosis. It kicks in when blood glucose levels drop and fatty acid levels rise. Ketones can power the brain, substituting for glucose. This is an evolutionary mechanism that allows us to survive during periods of starvation. But not all food is equal. Different foods affect your metabolism, your energy, and your well-being in different ways. Carbohydrates are the fastest source of energy. They are broken down into glucose, which enters the blood and can be used by cells for energy. Simple carbohydrates like sugar, sweets, and white bread raise blood sugar quickly, but also drop it quickly, causing an energy crash. Complex carbohydrates like whole grains, vegetables, and legumes are broken down more slowly, providing a steady level of sugar and energy. Proteins are the building blocks of your body. They are needed for tissue growth and repair, for making enzymes and hormones, and for maintaining the immune system. Proteins are not a primary source of energy, but when carbohydrates and fats are in short supply, they can be used for energy. Fats are a concentrated source of energy. They are also essential for absorbing fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, for hormone production, and for healthy cell membranes. Saturated fats, like animal fats and butter, in large amounts can raise cholesterol levels and increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. Unsaturated fats, like olive oil, nuts, avocado, and fish oil, are good for the heart. Vitamins and minerals are micronutrients needed in small amounts, but without them, the body cannot function properly. They participate in all metabolic processes. A deficiency of vitamins and minerals can lead to serious health problems. Water is the most important nutrient. You can survive without food for several weeks, but without water for only a few days. Water makes up about 60% of your body. It participates in all biochemical reactions, transports nutrients, removes waste, and regulates body temperature. Your body constantly loses water through breathing, sweating, and urine. These losses must be replenished. Dehydration can cause headaches, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, constipation, and kidney problems. Nutrition is not just fuel, it is information. Food tells your body what season it is, how much energy is available, and whether it needs to prepare for scarcity or can relax. This information affects metabolism, hormone production, and the immune system. Your body is an amazing system that can adapt to various nutritional conditions. But for it to work at its best, it needs the right fuel in the right amount at the right time. We already talked about muscles and how they contract and relax. But movement is not just muscle contraction. It is a complex process involving the nervous system, the skeleton, joints, ligaments, and tendons. And it is a process that keeps your body in working order. Your body has roughly 640 skeletal muscles. Each muscle is an organ made up of muscle tissue, connective tissue, blood vessels, and nerves. Muscles attach to bones through tendons, tough bands of connective tissue. When a muscle contracts, it pulls on the tendon, which pulls on the bone, causing movement. Muscles work in opposing pairs. When one contracts, the other relaxes. For example, when you bend your arm at the elbow, the bicep contracts and the tricep relaxes. When you straighten your arm, the opposite happens. Muscle contraction is a complex biochemical process. It begins with a nerve impulse arriving at a muscle fiber. The nerve impulse triggers the release of acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that sets off a cascade of reactions inside the muscle cell. These reactions cause two proteins, actin and myosin, to slide past each other, producing contraction. The energy for muscle contraction comes from ATP, adenosine triphosphate. ATP is the universal energy carrier in cells. It is produced in mitochondria, the power plants of cells. The ATP supply in muscles lasts only a few seconds of work, so muscles must constantly produce new ATP. There are three ways muscles produce ATP: the creatine phosphate system, the glycolytic system, and the aerobic system. The creatine phosphate system powers the first 10 to 15 seconds of intense work. The glycolytic system powers 1 to 2 minutes of intense work by breaking down glycogen without using oxygen. The aerobic system powers sustained work by using oxygen to burn carbohydrates and fats. Different types of muscle fibers specialize in different types of work. Slow twitch fibers, or type 1, are rich in mitochondria and blood vessels. They use the aerobic system and are resistant to fatigue. These fibers are used during sustained work, like long-distance running. Fast twitch fibers, or type 2, have fewer mitochondria and blood vessels. They use the glycolytic system and tire quickly. These fibers are used for short, intense efforts, like sprinting or weightlifting. The ratio of slow twitch to fast twitch fibers is genetically determined. Marathon runners have more slow twitch fibers. Sprinters have more fast twitch fibers. But training can change the properties of fibers. Regular aerobic training makes fast twitch fibers more endurance-oriented. Strength training makes slow twitch fibers stronger. Movement is not just the work of muscles. It also involves the skeleton and joints. The skeleton is the framework of your body. It is made up of 206 bones connected by joints. Bones serve several functions. They support the body, protect internal organs, provide attachment points for muscles, participate in blood cell production, and store minerals. Bones are not dead structures. They are alive and constantly being renewed. Special cells, osteoblasts, build new bone tissue, while osteoclasts break down old tissue. This process is called bone remodeling. Every 10 years, your skeleton is completely renewed. Joints are the connections between bones. They provide movement and flexibility. Joints come in different types: ball and socket, like the shoulder, hinge, like the elbow, and flat, like the wrist joints. Each type of joint allows a specific range of motion. Joints are reinforced by ligaments, bands of connective tissue that connect bones to each other. Ligaments limit joint movement, preventing injuries. Tendons connect muscles to bones. They transmit the force from muscles to bones. Movement is vital for your body's health. Regular physical activity strengthens the heart, improves circulation, builds endurance, strengthens bones and muscles, boosts mood, reduces stress, and helps manage weight. Lack of movement leads to weakened muscles, decreased bone density, impaired cardiovascular function, and disrupted metabolism. A sedentary lifestyle is one of the leading risk factors for many chronic diseases. But even the best body needs rest. Movement and rest are two sides of the same coin. Without rest, muscles do not recover, joints become inflamed, and the nervous system becomes exhausted. We already talked about how your body responds to stress. But stress is not just a reaction to danger. It is a complex response to any change that requires adaptation. Stress can be physical, injury, illness, cold, hunger, or psychological, fear, anxiety, anger, excitement. The stress response is an evolutionary mechanism that helped our ancestors survive dangerous situations. When you face a threat, your body mobilizes all its resources. This is called the fight or flight response. The fight or flight response starts in the brain. When you perceive a threat, the hypothalamus activates the sympathetic nervous system and the adrenal glands. The adrenals release adrenaline and noradrenaline, hormones that trigger the following changes. Heart rate increases, blood pressure rises, pupils dilate, breathing quickens, blood flow to muscles increases, and blood sugar rises. These changes prepare your body for action. You are ready to run or fight. This reaction develops within seconds and is automatic. You do not control it. If the stress continues, the second stage of the response kicks in, the hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal axis. The hypothalamus releases corticotropin-releasing hormone, which stimulates the pituitary. The pituitary releases adrenocorticotropic hormone, which stimulates the adrenal cortex. The adrenal cortex releases cortisol, the main stress hormone. Cortisol raises blood sugar, suppresses immunity, reduces inflammation, and raises blood pressure. In the short term, these effects are helpful. They help the body cope with stress. In the long term, high cortisol levels are harmful. Chronic stress is a state where the stress response never turns off. The body stays in a constant state of high alert. This leads to many problems: increased risk of cardiovascular disease, weakened immunity, disrupted sleep, impaired memory and concentration, increased anxiety and irritability, digestive problems, and weight gain. But stress is not all bad. Moderate stress can be beneficial. It mobilizes resources, boosts motivation, and improves focus. This type of stress is called eustress. Distress is the harmful kind of stress that causes overload and exhaustion. Your body can adapt to stress. This is called stress adaptation. With regular exposure to stress, the body becomes more resistant to it. It works like training. Each time, the response becomes less intense, and recovery becomes faster. But adaptation has limits. When stress is too intense or lasts too long, the body's resources are depleted. The exhaustion stage sets in. This is a state where the body can no longer cope with stress. Adaptation breaks down. Stress management is a key skill for maintaining health. There are many ways to manage stress: physical activity, relaxation, meditation, breathing exercises, social support, hobbies, proper nutrition, and healthy sleep. Physical activity is one of the most effective ways to fight stress. During exercise, endorphins are released, hormones that improve mood and reduce pain. Physical activity also lowers cortisol and adrenaline levels. Relaxation is the active release of muscle and mental tension. Relaxation techniques include progressive muscle relaxation, deep breathing, and visualization. They activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest and recovery. Meditation is the practice of focused awareness. It lowers cortisol levels, improves mood, increases concentration, and reduces anxiety. Regular meditation changes the structure of the brain, expanding areas related to attention and emotional regulation. Social support is another important factor in stress management. Spending time with loved ones lowers cortisol levels and raises oxytocin, a hormone linked to bonding and trust. Social isolation, on the other hand, increases stress. Your body and mind are inseparable. Psychological stress affects physical health. Physical health affects psychological well-being. This is a two-way connection, and understanding it helps you take better care of yourself. We already talked about the immune system and how it protects your body from infections. But the immune system is more than just defense. It also plays a role in tissue repair, in removing damaged cells, and in maintaining internal balance. The immune system is made up of many cells, tissues, and organs that work together to protect the body. Key components include bone marrow, where immune cells are produced, the thymus, where T lymphocytes mature, the spleen, which filters blood and houses immune cells, lymph nodes, which filter lymph, tonsils and adenoids, which protect the airways, and lymphatic vessels, which transport lymph and immune cells. Immune cells come in many types, each with its own speciality. Macrophages are the devourer cells. They engulf and digest pathogens and dead cells. Neutrophils are the first responders to infection. They quickly arrive at the infection site and destroy bacteria. Dendritic cells are the scouts. They capture antigens, process them, and present them to other immune cells. Natural killer cells destroy infected and cancerous cells. B lymphocytes produce antibodies. T lymphocytes coordinate the immune response and destroy infected cells. Inflammation is the immune system's response to damage or infection. It is a protective mechanism that helps eliminate the cause of damage and begin the healing process. Inflammation shows 5 classic signs: redness, swelling, heat, pain, and loss of function. Redness occurs because blood vessels widen, increasing blood flow to the inflamed area. Swelling occurs because blood vessels become more permeable, allowing fluid and immune cells to move into the tissues. Heat occurs due to increased blood flow and the release of warmth. Pain occurs due to irritation of nerve endings by chemicals released by immune cells. Loss of function occurs due to pain and swelling that limit movement. Inflammation can be acute or chronic. Acute inflammation is a quick response to damage or infection. It lasts a few days and usually ends with full recovery. Chronic inflammation is long-lasting inflammation that can persist for months or years. It is often linked to autoimmune diseases, chronic infections, obesity, and smoking. Chronic inflammation is a risk factor for many diseases: cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, depression, and neurodegenerative diseases. That is why managing inflammation is important for maintaining health. An anti-inflammatory diet is one way to manage inflammation. It includes foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids like fish, nuts, and seeds, antioxidants like berries, vegetables, and fruits, and fiber like whole grains and legumes. It excludes foods that promote inflammation, processed foods, sugar, saturated fats, and trans fats. Physical activity also helps reduce inflammation. Regular, moderate exercise lowers levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines and raises levels of anti-inflammatory cytokines. Chronic stress, on the other hand, promotes inflammation. Sleep is also important for managing inflammation. During sleep, anti-inflammatory cytokines are released. Chronic sleep deprivation raises levels of pro-inflammatory markers. The immune system is a complex and finely tuned system. It needs to be active enough to protect the body, but not so active that it attacks the body's own tissues. This delicate balance is easily disrupted. When the immune system attacks the body's own tissues, autoimmune diseases develop: rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, lupus, type 1 diabetes. The causes of autoimmune diseases are not fully understood, but they include genetic predisposition and environmental factors. When the immune system is not active enough, the body becomes vulnerable to infections and cancer. This happens in immunodeficiency conditions, HIV infection, the use of immunosuppressive drugs, and aging. Your immune system is an incredibly complex and effective defense system. It works 24 hours a day, protecting you from countless threats. And for it to work effectively, it needs proper nutrition, physical activity, healthy sleep, and stress management. We have been through nutrition, movement, and stress. We have seen how your body gets energy, how it moves, and how it responds to challenges. But there is one more aspect that is often overlooked. Your body is not just a machine. It is a system that is constantly renewing itself, constantly changing. Every cell in your body lives and dies. You literally become a different person every few years. How does this happen? And what does it mean for your health and your sense of self? That is what we will explore next. Here is a fact that sounds almost like science fiction, but is pure biology. Every 7 to 10 years, your body replaces virtually all of its cells. Literally. The person reading these words right now is physically not the same person who was reading a book 7 years ago. Your body is the ship of Theseus, constantly rebuilding itself. The cells of your body are constantly dying and being replaced by new ones. This process is called cell renewal, and it happens at different rates in different tissues. Skin cells are renewed every 2 to 4 weeks. Cells lining the stomach are renewed every 3 to 5 days. Liver cells are renewed every 150 to 500 days. Bone cells are renewed every 10 years. Heart and brain cells renew more slowly, but even they are not static. Every second, about 1 million cells die in your body, and roughly the same number of new ones are born. This balance sustains life. Without cell death, there would be no life. Cells die through a programmed death called apoptosis. This is not a random process. It is a controlled self-destruction that removes damaged, old, or unneeded cells. Apoptosis is a remarkable process. A cell that receives the signal to die activates special enzymes that cut its DNA into fragments, disassemble its structure, and package the remains into membrane-bound packets. Then these packets are consumed by neighboring cells or macrophages. During apoptosis, no inflammation occurs. The cell disappears cleanly and neatly, leaving no trace. Stem cells are cells that can turn into different types of cells. They are responsible for tissue renewal. Stem cells are found in the bone marrow, in the skin, in the intestines, in the liver, and in the brain. They divide and give rise to new cells, which then differentiate into specialized cells. Stem cells are your body's repair crew. When tissue is damaged, stem cells activate and start producing new cells for repair. This happens during wound healing, during liver recovery after damage, and during intestinal renewal. But as we age, the number and activity of stem cells decreases. This is one of the causes of aging. Tissues renew more slowly, damage accumulates, and recovery becomes less efficient. Mitochondria are the power plants of your cells. They produce ATP, the energy needed for all cellular processes. But mitochondria are also the main source of free radicals, highly reactive molecules that damage cells. Free radicals are molecules with an unpaired electron. They are unstable and try to steal an electron from other molecules, damaging them in the process. Damage caused by free radicals is called oxidative stress. This is one of the leading theories of aging. Free radicals damage DNA, proteins, and cell membranes. Over time, the damage accumulates, and cells stop functioning properly. Antioxidants are molecules that neutralize free radicals. They donate an electron without becoming unstable themselves. Antioxidants are produced inside the body, such as glutathione and ubiquinone, and they come from food, such as vitamin C, vitamin E, and beta-carotene. They protect cells from oxidative damage. Telomeres are protective caps at the ends of chromosomes. They consist of repeating sequences of DNA. With each cell division, telomeres get shorter. When telomeres become too short, the cell stops dividing and enters a state of senescence. This is called the Hayflick limit. Telomeres are the biological clocks of the cell. They limit the number of divisions a cell can undergo. When telomeres shorten, the cell becomes senescent. It stops dividing but does not die. Instead, it releases inflammatory signals that can damage surrounding tissues. The enzyme telomerase can rebuild telomeres. It is active in stem cells and cancer cells. In normal cells, telomerase is inactive. This is one reason cancer cells can divide indefinitely. They activate telomerase. Aging is a complex process involving many mechanisms. Oxidative stress, telomere shortening, DNA damage, accumulation of damaged proteins, decreased stem cell activity, chronic inflammation, and hormonal changes. Aging manifests at every level: cellular, tissue, and whole body. Skin loses elasticity and gets thinner. Muscles lose mass and strength. Bones become more brittle. Blood vessels lose elasticity. The brain shrinks in volume. The immune system weakens. Hormone levels change. But aging is not a death sentence. It is a process that can be slowed down. Research shows that lifestyle affects the rate of aging. Healthy eating, physical activity, stress management, and healthy sleep. All of these slow aging. Your body is not a static structure. It constantly adapts to environmental conditions. This ability to adapt is one of the main reasons the human species has been so successful. We can live in different climates, eat different foods, engage in different activities, and our body adapts to these conditions. Adaptation happens at every level, from molecular to whole body. At the molecular level, adaptation includes changes in gene expression, protein production, and metabolic pathways. At the cellular level, adaptation includes changes in cell structure and function. At the tissue level, adaptation includes changes in tissue composition and structure. At the whole body level, adaptation includes changes in how organs and systems work. Acclimatization is adaptation to changes in the environment. It happens over days or weeks. For example, when you move to the mountains, your body adapts to the lower oxygen levels. It starts producing more red blood cells to increase the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. This happens over several days. When you start exercising regularly, your body adapts to the demands. The heart becomes stronger and more efficient. The lungs increase their capacity. Muscles become more resilient and stronger. The capillary network in the muscles expands, improving the delivery of oxygen and nutrients. When you change your diet, your body adapts to the new type of food. If you start eating more fats and fewer carbohydrates, your body switches to using fat as its primary energy source. This is metabolic adaptation. Epigenetics is the study of how the environment influences gene expression. Epigenetic changes do not alter the DNA sequence itself. They affect chemical markers on DNA that regulate gene activity. These markers can change under the influence of nutrition, stress, physical activity, and toxins. Epigenetic changes can be passed on to the next generation. This means your lifestyle can affect the health of your children and even grandchildren. This is called transgenerational epigenetics. The microbiome is the community of microorganisms living in your gut. It consists of trillions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi. The microbiome influences digestion, immunity, metabolism, and mood. It also adapts to changes in diet and lifestyle. When you change your diet, the composition of the microbiome shifts within a few days. Different types of bacteria prefer different types of food. If you start eating more fiber, bacteria that digest fiber start to multiply. If you start eating more sugar, bacteria that prefer sugar begin to dominate. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change in response to experience. This includes creating new synapses, strengthening existing ones, removing unused connections, neuron migration, and neurogenesis, the creation of new neurons. Neuroplasticity is the basis of learning and memory. When you learn something new, new connections are created in your brain. When you repeat an action, those connections get stronger. The more you practice, the stronger the connections become. This explains why practice is essential for learning. Neuroplasticity also underlies recovery after brain injuries. When part of the brain is damaged, other parts can take over its functions. This is slow and requires intensive therapy, but it is possible. Your body is not just a machine. It is a living system that is constantly changing, adapting, and learning. You are not the same person you were yesterday, and you will not be the same person you become tomorrow. You are constantly becoming someone new. We talked about how your body works, how it maintains homeostasis, and how it adapts to changes. But sometimes systems fail. Sometimes homeostasis breaks down. This is called disease. Disease is not simply the absence of health. It is an active process involving complex interactions between pathogens, the immune system, genetic factors, and environmental factors. Disease is a state where the body's adaptive mechanisms can no longer handle the load. There are many ways to classify diseases. Infectious diseases are caused by pathogens, bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites. Non-infectious diseases have other causes: genetic mutations, metabolic disorders, tissue damage, toxin exposure, unhealthy lifestyles. Infectious diseases result from the interaction between a pathogen and the immune system. When a pathogen enters the body, the immune system fights back. If the immune system wins, the disease does not develop or is mild. If the pathogen wins, disease develops. Bacterial infections are treated with antibiotics. Antibiotics are substances that kill bacteria or stop their growth. They target specific components of bacterial cells: the cell wall, ribosomes, enzymes. Antibiotics do not work against viruses. Viral infections are harder to treat. Viruses are intracellular parasites. They use the host cell's machinery to reproduce. Antibiotics have no effect on viruses. Antiviral medications slow viral replication, but do not kill viruses. Vaccines are the most effective way to prevent viral infections. Genetic diseases are caused by mutations in genes. These mutations can be inherited or can occur spontaneously. Genetic diseases can appear at any age. Some show up in childhood, like cystic fibrosis and phenylketonuria. Others appear in adulthood, like Huntington's disease and certain types of cancer. Genetic diseases are not always inherited. Some arise from new mutations. This is especially common in the reproductive cells of parents. The older the parents, the higher the risk of new mutations. Autoimmune diseases occur when the immune system attacks the body's own tissues. The causes of autoimmune diseases are not fully understood. They include genetic predisposition and environmental factors, infections, stress, toxins, and diet. In autoimmune diseases, the immune system loses the ability to tell self from non-self. It begins attacking the body's own cells and tissues. This leads to chronic inflammation and tissue damage. Autoimmune diseases are difficult to treat. Treatment aims to suppress the immune system and reduce inflammation. Cardiovascular diseases are the leading cause of death worldwide. They include coronary heart disease, heart attack, stroke, high blood pressure, and heart failure. The main cause of cardiovascular disease is atherosclerosis, the buildup of fatty plaques in artery walls. Atherosclerosis develops slowly over decades. It begins with damage to the endothelium, the inner lining of the arteries. This damage is caused by high blood pressure, high cholesterol, smoking, and diabetes. Fats accumulate at the damaged site, forming plaques. Plaques narrow the arteries and reduce blood flow. If a plaque ruptures, a clot forms that can completely block the artery. Cancer is a disease in which cells begin to divide uncontrollably. Cancer is caused by mutations in genes that control the cell cycle. These mutations can be caused by environmental factors, smoking, ultraviolet radiation, viruses, and toxins. Or they can be inherited. Cancer cells have several characteristics. They divide uncontrollably. They ignore stop signals. They evade apoptosis. They stimulate the growth of new blood vessels, a process called angiogenesis. They invade surrounding tissues, a process called invasion. They spread throughout the body, a process called metastasis. Cancer treatment includes surgery, radiation therapy, chemotherapy, targeted therapy, and immunotherapy. Surgery removes the tumor. Radiation therapy destroys cancer cells with radiation. Chemotherapy uses drugs that kill rapidly dividing cells. Targeted therapy aims at specific molecules in cancer cells. Immunotherapy activates the immune system to fight cancer. Metabolic diseases are caused by disrupted metabolism. These include diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome, and gout. Metabolic diseases are often linked to lifestyle, poor diet, lack of physical activity, and chronic stress. Diabetes is a disruption of blood sugar regulation. In type 1 diabetes, the immune system destroys the beta cells of the pancreas that produce insulin. In type 2 diabetes, cells become resistant to insulin. Diabetes can lead to serious complications, damage to blood vessels, kidneys, nerves, and eyes. Obesity is excessive fat accumulation in the body. It increases the risk of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and joint problems. Obesity is caused by an imbalance between energy intake and expenditure. But it is also a complex condition involving genetic, hormonal, and psychological factors. Neurodegenerative diseases are diseases in which neurons progressively die. These include Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as ALS. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia. It is characterized by the buildup of beta-amyloid plaques and tau protein tangles in the brain. These deposits damage neurons and disrupt the connections between them. Symptoms include memory loss, impaired thinking, and personality changes. Parkinson's disease is characterized by the death of neurons in the substantia nigra, a brain region that produces dopamine. A dopamine deficiency leads to movement problems, tremor, rigidity, slowness of movement, and impaired balance. Diseases are complex processes involving many factors. Understanding these processes helps develop new treatments and preventative strategies. Medicine is constantly advancing. New research uncovers new disease mechanisms and new approaches to treatment. Health is not just the absence of disease. It is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. It is a resource that allows you to live a full life, pursue your goals, and enjoy each day. Health is an investment in your future. And like any investment, it requires attention, time, and effort. You cannot simply ignore your health and hope it will take care of itself. It needs care. Prevention is a key component of health. Prevention includes regular medical checkups, healthy eating, physical activity, stress management, and giving up harmful habits. Regular medical checkups allow diseases to be detected at early stages when they are easier to treat. Screening tests like blood pressure measurement, blood work, mammograms, and colonoscopies help find problems before symptoms appear. Healthy eating is the foundation of health. It provides the body with necessary nutrients, maintains a healthy weight, and reduces the risk of chronic diseases. A healthy diet includes a variety of foods rich in vitamins, minerals, fiber, and antioxidants. It limits the intake of sugar, salt, saturated fats, and processed foods. Physical activity is another key component of health. Regular exercise strengthens the heart, improves circulation, builds endurance, strengthens bones and muscles, boosts mood, reduces stress, and helps manage weight. The World Health Organization recommends at least 150 minutes of moderate physical activity per week. Stress management is an important aspect of health. Chronic stress raises the risk of many diseases. Stress management techniques include physical activity, relaxation, meditation, breathing exercises, social support, hobbies, and healthy sleep. Giving up harmful habits is another important step toward health. Smoking, alcohol consumption, and drug use increase the risk of many diseases. Quitting these habits reduces risk and improves quality of life. Sleep is an essential part of health. During sleep, the body recovers, the brain processes information, and the immune system strengthens. Lack of sleep increases the risk of many diseases. Adults are recommended to sleep 7 to 9 hours per night. Social connections are an important factor in health. Spending time with loved ones reduces stress, improves mood, and boosts quality of life. Social isolation, on the other hand, increases the risk of depression, anxiety, and cardiovascular disease. Health is not just physical well-being, it is also mental and social well-being. Mental health includes emotional well-being, the ability to cope with stress, productivity, and contributing to your community. Social health includes the ability to build and maintain relationships, feel connected to other people, and contribute to society. Taking care of your health is a lifelong process. It requires constant attention, but it pays enormous dividends. Healthy people live longer, are more productive, and get more enjoyment out of life. Your body is your most valuable asset. It is the only place you will live your entire life. Take care of it, invest in it, and it will repay you with a long, healthy, and happy life. We have reached the end of our journey. We traveled through the entire day, from waking to deep sleep. We traced the path of air, blood, and nutrients. We saw how the brain works and how the senses perceive the world. We learned about cell renewal, adaptation, disease, and health. But there is one more topic we have not touched on. A topic that ties everything together. A topic that explains why all these systems work together so smoothly. It is the topic of evolution. Why is your body designed the way it is, and not some other way? Why do we breathe the way we do? Why does our heart beat at this particular rate? The answers to these questions lie in millions of years of evolution. And in this final section, we will talk about how evolution shaped your body into what it is today. We have traveled through the entire day, from waking to deep sleep. We traced the path of air, blood, and nutrients. We saw how the brain works and how the senses perceive the world. We learned about cell renewal, adaptation, disease, and health. But there is one more topic that ties everything together. A topic that explains why all these systems work in such harmony. It is the topic of evolution. Why is your body built the way it is? The answer lies in millions of years of evolution. Your body is not a random assembly of organs. It is the result of millions of years of natural selection that shaped every detail of your anatomy and physiology. Every feature of your body has an evolutionary history. Let us start with the most obvious. Why do we walk on two legs? Bipedalism is one of the key features that sets us apart from other primates. Our ancestors began walking upright about 6 to 7 million years ago. This happened when forests in Africa started giving way to grasslands. Walking on two legs freed the hands for using tools and carrying food. It also allowed our ancestors to see farther above the tall grass, helping them spot predators and prey. But bipedalism comes at a cost. Our spine, originally horizontal, became vertical. This created strain on the lower back, leading to back pain. Our pelvic bones became wider and shorter to support the internal organs. This changed the birth canal, making childbirth more difficult and painful. Our knees and ankles evolved to handle the load of walking and running, but they became more prone to injury. The large brain is another key human feature. Over the last 3 to 4 million years, our brain volume has tripled. This increase was tied to the development of complex social structures, language, culture, and technology. A large brain consumes an enormous amount of energy, about 20% of the body's total metabolism. That is the price we pay for intelligence. But the large brain created a problem. To pass through the birth canal, a baby has to be born with a relatively small brain. A significant portion of brain growth happens after birth, in the first years of life. This makes human babies helpless for a much longer period than the young of other primates. This required the development of complex social structures and parental care. Upright walking and a large brain changed our faces. Our jaws became smaller and our teeth became finer. This was tied to a dietary shift. We began eating softer food that was easier to chew. Our facial muscles became more expressive, enabling us to develop complex facial expressions and non-verbal communication. Hairless skin is another uniquely human feature. Unlike other primates, we lack a dense coat of body hair. This is tied to the need for cooling. When our ancestors began living in grasslands and hunting during the heat of the day, they needed an efficient cooling mechanism. Sweating through bare skin is the most efficient way to cool down. We have about 2 to 5 million sweat glands that can produce up to about 2.5 gallons of sweat per day. The loss of body hair also contributed to the development of social bonds. Skin became an important organ for social interaction. Touches, hugs, kisses all stimulate the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Skin also became an important sense organ, allowing us to gather information about the world through touch. Color vision is another evolutionary acquisition. Our ancestors were fruit eaters. They needed to tell ripe fruit apart from green leaves. This required trichromatic vision, the ability to see 3 primary colors. Most mammals have dichromatic vision. They see only two colors. Trichromatic vision gave our ancestors an advantage in finding food. But color vision has a cost. The genes for perceiving red and green are located on the X chromosome. This makes color blindness more common in men. About 8% of men have some form of color vision deficiency. The opposable thumb is a key feature of our hand. It allows us to grasp and hold objects with great precision. This ability developed in our tree-dwelling ancestors, who needed to grip branches. It then became the foundation for tool use. Our intestines became shorter than those of other primates. This was tied to a dietary change. When our ancestors began eating meat, they needed a shorter gut because meat is easier to digest than plant material. The shorter intestines saved energy, which could then be used for brain development. Our immune system evolved in response to the pathogens our ancestors encountered. Many genes related to immunity show signs of positive selection. This means they were especially important for survival. But the evolution of the immune system is an arms race. Pathogens evolve faster than we do. That is why our immune system is constantly in a state of battle. Our metabolism evolved in conditions of irregular access to food. Our ancestors did not know when their next meal would come. So our bodies learned to store energy as fat. In the modern world, where food is available around the clock, this ability becomes a problem. Obesity is a result of an evolutionary mismatch between our bodies and the modern environment. Evolutionary mismatch is a key concept for understanding many modern diseases. Our bodies evolved in conditions very different from today's world. We did not evolve for a sedentary lifestyle, for a diet high in sugar and fat, for artificial lighting, or for chronic stress. This mismatch leads to diseases of civilization, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obesity, depression, and sleep disorders. Understanding the evolutionary history of your body helps explain why it works the way it does. It helps explain why we are susceptible to certain diseases. And it helps find paths to better health that align with our biology. We have come a long way. We started with waking up, with the first breath of a new day. We traced the path of air through the nose, windpipe, and bronchi into the alveoli, where oxygen met the blood. We saw how the heart, that tireless pump, drives blood through 60,000 miles of vessels. We visited the chemical factory called the liver and the filtration station called the kidneys. We peered into the nervous system, where 86 billion neurons create thoughts, feelings, and memories. We saw how the immune system, that silent army, defends us from countless enemies. We followed sleep, when the brain performs its deep cleaning, and evolution, which shaped every detail of our body. And now let us pause for a moment. Let us simply appreciate what we have just done. We have taken a journey through the most complex system in the universe, and that system is you. Think about this. Right now, as you listen to these words, your body is performing trillions of operations per second. Your heart is beating. Your lungs are breathing. Your kidneys are filtering. Your brain is processing information. Your immune system is patrolling. And all of this happens without your knowledge, without your control, without a single thought from you. It just happens. It works. This is life. Your body is not just a machine. It is a wonder. It is the result of billions of years of evolution, billions of years of trial and error, billions of years of fighting for survival. Every cell in your body carries the history of that fight. Every gene is a record of how our ancestors survived and reproduced. Every adaptation is a solution to a problem our ancestors faced. You are a product of evolution, but you are also its peak. Never before has there been an organism that could so deeply understand itself, so precisely analyze its own systems, so consciously influence its own health. You are the first being in the history of Earth that knows how its own body works. And that knowledge is power. Knowing how your body works lets you make better decisions. It lets you understand the signals your body sends. It lets you take care of yourself more consciously. But knowledge is also responsibility. When you know how your body works, you cannot just ignore it. You cannot just hope everything will be fine. You have to act. You have to take care of yourself. What does taking care of yourself mean? It means eating well. It means moving. It means sleeping. It means managing stress. It means paying attention to your body's signals. It means not ignoring pain, not ignoring fatigue, not ignoring anxiety. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. You cannot take care of others if you do not take care of yourself. You cannot be a good family member if you are sick. You cannot be a productive worker if you are exhausted. You cannot be a good friend if you are in a dark place. Taking care of yourself is the foundation on which everything else is built. But taking care of yourself is not just a duty. It is also a joy. A healthy body gives you energy, optimism, and vitality. It lets you enjoy life. It lets you do what you love. It lets you be yourself. Your body is not just a tool. It is a home. It is the only place you will live your entire life. And like any home, it needs care. It needs attention. It needs love. You can treat your body like an enemy. Fight it, hate it, ignore it. Or you can treat it like a friend. Respect it, take care of it, listen to it. The choice is yours. I hope this journey has helped you see your body in a new way. I hope you have seen its complexity, its beauty, its remarkable wisdom. I hope you have felt gratitude toward this body that serves you faithfully every single day. Your body is a wonder. It deserves respect. It deserves care. It deserves love. We have reached the end of our journey. But this is not the end. It is the beginning. Now that you know how your body works, you can live differently. You can make more conscious decisions. You can take better care of yourself. You can appreciate what you have. But how exactly do you live with this knowledge? How do you put it into practice? Here are some thoughts. Breathe with intention. You do it 20,000 times a day. But how often do you pay attention to your breathing? Try it now. Take a deep breath. Feel the air filling your lungs. Feel your chest expanding. Hold it for a moment. Then slowly exhale. This simple act can calm your nervous system, reduce stress, and bring you back to the present. Move. Your body was made for movement. It was not designed to sit in a chair for 10 hours a day. Find a way to move that you enjoy. Walk, run, swim, dance, do yoga, lift weights. It does not matter what it is. What matters is that you move. Your muscles, bones, heart, lungs, and brain, they all need movement. Eat well. Your body needs fuel. It needs proteins, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, and water. Eat a variety of foods. Eat whole foods. Eat vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, fish, and meat. Avoid processed foods, excess sugar, and trans fats. Drink enough water. Sleep. Sleep is not a luxury. It is a necessity. Your brain needs sleep to clear out waste. Your body needs sleep to recover. Your immune system needs sleep to strengthen. Get 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Create a regular sleep schedule. Make your bedroom dark, quiet, and cool. Avoid screens for an hour before bed. Manage your stress. Stress is an unavoidable part of life, but chronic stress destroys your health. Find ways to manage it. Meditate. Practice breathing exercises. Take walks in nature. Spend time with loved ones. Pursue hobbies. Laugh. Cry. Allow yourself to feel. Listen to your body. Your body is constantly sending you signals. Hunger, thirst, fatigue, pain, tension, anxiety. These are all signals. Pay attention to them. Do not ignore them. Do not drown them out with coffee, sugar, alcohol, or drugs. Listen to them. Understand them. Act on them. Be kind to yourself. Your body is not perfect. It ages. It gets sick. It sometimes lets you down. That is normal. Do not demand the impossible from it. Do not punish it for being imperfect. Be kind to it. Treat it with compassion. Remember that it serves you faithfully every single day. Appreciate the moment. Your body is an instrument for living. It lets you love, feel joy, create, learn, and grow. Do not wait until something goes wrong to appreciate it. Appreciate it now, in this very moment. Right now, your heart is beating. Right now, your lungs are breathing. Right now, your brain is processing these words. That is a miracle. Do not miss it. We have come a long way. We started with waking up, with the first breath of a new day. We traced the path of air, blood, and nutrients. We looked inside the brain, the immune system, and the endocrine system. We learned about sleep, stress, movement, and nutrition. We came to understand how evolution shaped our body and how we can take care of it. And now it is time to come back to yourself. To the person lying in the dark right now, listening to these words. To the person who has already started drifting off to sleep. To the person who now knows a little more about the miracle called the human body. You are not just a collection of organs. You are not just a sum of systems. You are a unified whole where everything is connected. Every cell, every organ, every system works in harmony with the others, sustaining life, sustaining you. Your body is the result of billions of years of evolution. It carries within it the history of life on Earth, and at the same time, it is nature's most modern creation, the most complex, the most remarkable. You are breath. Every inhale connects you to the atmosphere, to the plants, to other people. The oxygen you breathe in was produced somewhere in a forest or an ocean. The carbon dioxide you breathe out will become part of new plants. You are part of the cycle of life. You are blood. Every heartbeat connects you to the flow of life. The blood running through your veins carries the history of your ancestors, the history of evolution, the history of life itself. You are thought. Every thought passing through your brain connects you to culture, to language, to history. The thoughts you think do not belong only to you. They are part of the shared human heritage. You are feeling. Every emotion you experience connects you to other people. Joy, sadness, fear, love, all a part of the human experience. You are not alone in what you feel. You are life, and life is a miracle. It is fragile and strong at the same time. It can be destroyed in the blink of an eye, but it can also survive under the most incredible conditions. It is constant and changeable. It is unique and yet part of something greater. Here is what I want you to take away from this journey. Your body is not just a tool. It is a temple. It is a home. It is a miracle. And it deserves all your love and care. Fall asleep with a feeling of gratitude. Gratitude toward your heart, which beats without stopping. Gratitude toward your lungs, which breathe without a break. Gratitude toward your brain, which creates thoughts even as you sleep. Gratitude toward your body, which serves you your entire life. Fall asleep with a feeling of wonder. Wonder at the complexity and beauty of your body. Wonder at the fact that you are part of this amazing world. Wonder at life itself. Fall asleep with a feeling of hope. Hope that you will take better care of yourself. Hope that you will live more consciously. Hope that you will cherish every moment. And tomorrow, when you open your eyes, you will already be a different person. Because you will know. You will know how your body works. And that knowledge will change you. It will change how you breathe, how you move, how you eat, how you sleep, how you feel, how you live. This new day will be the beginning of a new life. A life in which you understand yourself better. A life in which you take better care of yourself. A life in which you treasure every moment. Good night. Your body knows what to do. It will work through the night while you sleep. It will breathe, beat, filter, and restore. It will take care of you, just as it has your entire life. Trust it. Let go of control. Allow yourself to sink into sleep. Allow yourself to recover. Allow yourself to simply be. Because you are a miracle. You are life. You are a remarkable, incredible, one-of-a-kind human being. And that is the most beautiful thing in this world. Good night.